Erika Stinchcomb, sponsored by Westside Discs. You're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast.
You're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast with your hosts, Quentin Ferris and Horatio Gonzalez. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers.
What's going on, everyone? Horatio here with the Chain Clankers podcast. Here with me, like always, my partner Quentin. Today we have a fun episode. We got to talk to Erika. We're just chatting, about overall disc golf, but we'll have Quentin here tell us a little bit about that in a bit. But how are you doing today, Quentin?
Oh, just living the life. You and I just pulled double duty. We recorded on back-to-back days. We're actually recording this episode a week early. And so, we just saw each other almost like 12 hours ago when we recorded the last episode. But here we are back again. Super exciting episode. If you guys haven't already, make sure you smash that subscribe button, that like button on YouTube. This is going to be a really fun one. Like Horatio said, and like you heard in the intro, we're talking to Erika. And this is, some West Side love. There's not enough West Side love out there. As someone who's a big fan of West Side Discs, I think there needs to be some more West Side love out there. So we talk about Erika's journey through disc golf, right? So we do the classic. We figure out where she came from, why disc golf was a passion for her, and how she got to where she's at right now. We talk pretty in depth, I'd like to say, about Trilogy and West Side, and kind of go behind the scenes of those three companies. I feel like not everyone, even myself included, does not understand their partnership and what all those sponsored players can do. So we talk about that, which was really fun. And then we get into the educational part of today's show, and we talk about Anhyzers, how to throw Anhyzers, some discs to use for Anhyzers. I think it's really important to have that shot in your bag, and that's something that I'm struggling with right now, and something that I definitely feel as though after listening to this episode, I'm a lot better at throwing Anhyzers. So you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned through the end so you can become better at throwing Anhyzers, as well as Erika has a hilarious story at the end when we're in the ace round. You're going to want to make sure you stay tuned through the end. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let's go ahead and bring Erika on. Erika, welcome into the Chain Clankers podcast. Super excited to get you on, and we've been trying to get you for a little bit. Finally, the schedules lined up, the stars were aligned, and we were able to get you on the show. Super excited to have you. How are we doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Life on the road is definitely a lot all the time, so I'm glad we could make this happen.
How long have you been on the road for now?
Only like a month and a half, but it feels like
Really?
4 months, 5 months. Yeah, we left.
Really?
My husband's with me. We left mid-February, but it's like a lifetime ago.
Where's home for you during the off season?
Yeah, I've lived in Missoula, Montana, like very western, like middle Montana for the past, like pretty much my whole adult life, almost 10 years.
Nice. That's awesome. You guys just have like a pretty sicked out van that you guys just drive around the country in?
Oh, I wish. I got some van envy. I had a little van that I used myself. Like I'd just go out for a couple months at a time, like while I was working full time, or weeks or whatever I could manage. But this is the first time I've traveled like with anybody. So my husband and I got a new truck, and then we bought the oldest little camper. Like it's a 1968 little 15-foot travel trailer. So the contrast is hilarious because it's like 2021 truck, budget ran out, 1968 trailer.
Yeah.
So that's what we're rocking right now.
Hey, whatever works, everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It does the job.
Yeah.
So what's the truck?
It's a Toyota Tacoma.
Oh my gosh, what a nice truck that is.
I feel like you already knew that. Did you already know that?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I'm a proud Tacoma owner as well.
Yeah, it's the best.
What color is your Tacoma?
It's like a dark gray, and then we get like a matching topper on it. So we have so much just like fun stuff, like bikes and a basket and an inflatable kayak back there just for the, your free time.
Nice. That's sick. Yeah, I'm now on my second Tacoma. I got the 21 Voodoo Blue right now, and big fan of it. That is by far best mid-sized truck out there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for him to do Tacoma stuff. Like you're out there pulling a trailer and hauling some bikes, and Louis got like his disc golf bag in the back.
Oh, that's so true.
Where's the
It's
kayaks?
handy to have just in case. You get a lot of people asking you to help move, like out of their apartments.
Yeah.
It's okay. I put a bed cover on there so that way I can use that excuse. Sorry, guy, I can't fit anything in the bed
Yeah.
anymore.
Oh man.
It's really just a
Yeah,
car
that's
at this
funny.
point. Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. Who would have thought this would have turned into the Chain Tacoma podcast? But I'm happy it did. Oh man, that's awesome. Erika, where can the people follow you at on Instagram? You got a YouTube channel? Anything that they can subscribe to?
Yeah, Instagram is America with a K 71262, my PDGA number. That's definitely where I'm most active. Trying to get some YouTube stuff up and going, but it's not there yet. I'm not even going to broadcast that.
Yeah. No, for sure. We are definitely in the same boat trying to get that YouTube gang going hard.
Right.
It's definitely a challenge. I've got some
a lot
ideas.
of work.
Yeah, I've got some ideas for sure. I guess let's go ahead and start this interview off where does disc golf like begin for you? How long have you been playing disc golf?
Yeah, sure. My dad taught it to me when I was 16. I grew up in San Diego, so I grew up playing Morley Field. And, you know, I was just in high school and he took me and my brother once and we were hooked. And we went like every weekend, you know, it was like at 45 minutes or an hour drive. And that's a really crowded course. So like my family's not early rising people, me and my brother, but we get up at the crack of dawn so we could get like a round of disc golf in before anybody else got to the course. So yeah, it started there. And then it was just super casual. Like I played in college just for fun in Missoula, where I, you know, currently live. And, you know, my friends all played and it was just something I did for fun. And then a buddy of mine, like right after I graduated college, but before I moved to Seattle for a while, it was like in that in-between period, I was getting my first job and whatever. A friend was like, hey, I want to play a tournament. Do you want to play? And I was like, no, I don't want to pay money to play disc golf. Like, could you be any dumber?
Yeah.
Like I said no so many times. And like, we weren't even that like tight of buddies, but he just didn't want to do it alone. He's like, I'll spot you the $45 or whatever it is, like to go play. You should do it. And then I did it and I loved it. That was the first time I'd ever played with any other like women that played seriously. Cause before that it was just like, you know, you'd see like the wife or the girlfriend and they'd throw once and then they'd pick it up and then they'd watch, you know, and they didn't really play. So to see other like women do it was like, oh my God, wow, this is great. So then I moved to Seattle and started working as an athletic trainer at Boeing. That's what I went to college for. And then knew I was like, oh, I'm going to play all these tournaments and do this fun stuff and, you know, make some friends, like hopefully some women friends that play, like that exists. I know it does, you know, and had like a hard time getting in the scene. Ended up going down to like Portland a lot because their women's scene was huge. Like this was probably, I don't know, how long ago was this? Like, I guess I was 23, so like 6 or 7 years ago. And yeah, I just went down to Portland a ton and played just local tournaments. I played it in advanced women right away. That's the only division I've ever played in besides pro, and played, you know, like I'd go down to Portland like once a month or twice a month and play like little B and C tiers. And then it was kind of like a pretty quick progression. Like I just wanted to play for fun and meet some people and whatever. But then a friend of mine, Tina Oakley, was like, you know, we could probably do this professionally. And I laughed like, what? No, we can't, you know? And I like flew down to Daisy Chains that year. And that's like one of the only big tournaments that I won. I mean, I was still an AM, but I won FA1. And there was like, you know, like 20 or 25 women playing. So it was like, it seemed like a big deal. And I was like, maybe I can do this. And then we hit 2017 and I was like, I'm just going to go straight to pro. I was like 840 rated at the time. I'm like, I'm just going to try it. So I bought a van, an old one, an 81 Ford Econoline van. And then I lived in it for like 6 months. Not in an apartment. I lived in the van while I was working full time to save up to do this little mini tour, unsponsored, just to see if I liked it, just to see if I wanted to do the whole tour life thing. And I loved it. It was hard and I was pretty bad, but you know, I met so many amazing people and played the coolest courses, and I knew that I had to get back here. So this is the first year I've been able to actually do it. I've always worked like full-time or multiple part-time jobs and just gotten out when I can and had little mini tours. But yeah, this is the first year that I really get to kind of give it my all. So
cool. So what span was that from when your dad took you out and then to this point now?
yeah, so I mean, I've been playing for math 13 years. So like that's kind of the progression. I'd say I've been playing for like 6 or 7 years before I started playing tournaments. And then I played AM for like, I don't know, 2 years maybe before just jumping straight in to a pro field.
And how's it feeling kind of being in that pro field right now? Like any like kind of nerves, I guess, being in pro instead of AM right now?
Well, I mean, I've been playing FPO now for a couple years, since 2017, and I was definitely nervous at first, and sometimes I still, will feel it because so I don't know, it's hard to have confidence in yourself at all times, and sometimes like you're looking at, I don't know, Paige Pierce or Haley King or someone that can do these amazing things, and you're like, oh my God, do I belong here? And like the answer is yes, but I always have to prove it to myself over and over, like, oh yeah, I can do this, yeah. So I'm just kind of merging into that. It usually takes me probably about 2 months of like playing consistent tournaments and not really doing anything else before I like really hit my stride. So I'm looking forward to hopefully that very soon.
Yeah, because I would feel like that'd be kind of intense, but also, pretty motivating to see Paige Pierce and Haley out there every weekend, playing at that level. And
Mm-hmm.
to them, or if you're watching that lead card, you see the mistakes and you see how they're playing compared to each other. But I guess from lower, people playing not at that level quite yet or trying to be there, it's pretty impressive. I know for me it is. I know like there would be comments because on Disc Golf Network, they'll let people comment and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really annoying. The guys or whoever on there will start commenting like, oh, this is so boring. Like, oh,
Yeah.
like I switch it off as soon as the females come on. And I'm like, you guys are insane. Like these ladies would like kill you guys on the course any given
Uh-huh.
weekend. And it's so annoying, but the level they're playing at, like people don't give it enough respect.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that, like your average weekend player or casual golfer can learn a lot more from the women than they can for the men. Like, sure,
Yeah.
maybe some of you can go out and like throw 450 feet right away and you're so good, whatever, like good for you. But a lot of people are at that 300, 350, maybe 400-foot range where you have to think about other things besides distance. You have to think about the shape of the shot and placement and angles and whatever. It is very technical, but because it's not this big exciting 600-foot shot, like I think that's unfair to call it uninteresting.
Yeah, for sure. Were you someone that kind of came out with like big distance, or were you someone that kind of learned how to, I almost want to call it like be a more accurate disc golfer before you learned to be a bomber? Which kind of disc golfer were you when you were kind of coming up?
I mean, I've kind of always, not always, but for most of the time I've been throwing, I've been stuck kind of right in that 350 range. Like I can get into the 375s, and if it's downhill, like maybe I'll get a 400 kind of a thing, but like 325 to 350, which is super average. At first, like 5 years ago, when I was like really getting into being an am and throwing, that was like a really good distance. And now, like I'm shortest off the tee often because everybody's getting so good. And when I started, I didn't watch any like YouTube videos, and I was playing with men all the time. And so I just like learned to throw as hard as I can with max weight discs. So I was throwing like Nico shots, right? Like turnover, sidearm, or, like force flex, I guess.
Yeah.
Both shots, backhand and forehand. And so I had to go back and like relearn how to throw, or just learn period, like what is a Hyzer flip and like how to throw an Anhyzer. That took me forever to learn. With the right discs. And so now I definitely think like there's still more in my form I'd like to clean up. I learned so many bad habits so early. And like I think that I could probably unlock 400 now, but as it is, like I would say incredibly average in the FPO field, which is like not a bad thing because I can still compete.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But I mean, we've talked about this before a little bit, but distance is one thing, but some of those people that throw bombs, they have no accuracy when it comes to their approach or their
Oh
putting.
yeah, the approach is definitely a strength of mine, because my dad, like, I could throw it farther than him immediately, right? But then he always beat me because he could park it within 15 and I always had to putt. So I like learned pretty early how important the approach was. But then like when I started playing competitively, had no putt at all. And then my putt is definitely like where I feel the nerves, so it's hit or miss. But like my scramble and approach game is definitely like pretty on point, some of my strengths.
If you're, I guess, kind of having to scramble or in the woods or anything like that, what is the number one disc, I guess, you're going to in your bag for those scramble shots?
I would say that largely when I'm scrambling, it's like a stretched out sidearm, probably. Um, so I don't know. I use a couple, like if you need a skip shot or something like that, I'll use like a felon to get out. Or I use like a convict a lot, and we'll throw kind of like a force, like really high kind of stall sidearm that moves kind of right to left and then pans out to the right at the end. Um, yeah, probably just like a moderately stable fairway driver.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, we skipped this part in your story. How did Westside come into your disc golf journey? How did that happen?
Sure. When I was playing, that kind of mini tour, I toured for 5 months in 2017 when I was unsponsored and just jumped in the van and went. I literally went until my money ran out. So I was like around, the scene, and kind of started to know like the people in the sport, and know kind of what to expect from sponsorships, a little bit. I mean, it's kind of like no one really talks about it super openly, like how much money do you get, like what kind of support do you get. It's like kind of awkward. So I gathered a little bit and was trying to decide like who am I going to pursue. I threw like a lot of Innova at first, but I threw a ton of, I think I had 5 or 6 different companies in my bag. So I was like, well, I could probably go with anybody and be fine. But I spent a lot of my time with the Oakleys, and they were sponsored by Dynamic. And so I was initially going to pursue Dynamic discs. I just, liked how they treated their people, and threw plenty of their plastic and liked it, and got to see like pretty firsthand how, I don't know, how they treated like Tina and Eric. So that was the year they kind of signed a ton of people in 2018, and I was like a little late to the party. And so Westside was kind of like it was, I don't want to call it like a backup. I'm not even sure how it like really happened. I just talked to Robert McCall, who was, the team manager for DD at the time. And they, Westside was kind of like a thing that they had just acquired between them and Latitude 64. And I honestly didn't know a lot about it. Like I threw a harp, but I didn't realize that it was kind of a company enfolded in other companies.
Yeah.
And so like Dynamic was stacked, their team. And so I kind of went up to Robert and was like, what about Westside? You kind of just have a bunch of AMs. Like, you don't really have much of a team. Who do I talk to about that? And Robert was kind of like, well, I mean, you can talk to me. And, I just said, you don't really have any touring players. And so until Nico, I've been the only one who even semi-tours. And now we've got a couple more people that are getting into it. But, I mean, them signing Nico was a big deal and has gotten Westside a lot of publicity. And, I hope as the year goes on and the years go on, because I'm happy with them and they've treated me well. I'm hoping to get on that same level and really promote Westside, because it's kind of like just a smaller level. There's just like, maybe people don't really know about it. I didn't even really know about it that well when I got sponsored by them. So
I guess a question that I have for you is the folk at DD running everything like at Westside. So for example, Robert McCall was the team manager for Dynamic. Was he also the team manager for Westside, or is it somebody completely different?
In a way, like Robert ran all the teams. He ran Latitude, who largely do their own thing, and Westside and Dynamic, but was mostly focused on Dynamic. And they usually have like a couple of people, and you'll have, your Westside point person. So like Brian Shintaku was my team manager for a long time. And now there's Gabe Diaz Serrano mostly does it, but I also talk to Eric McCabe a lot, so it definitely is like very enfolded in the same I don't really deal with latitude. It's almost exclusively the same dynamic circle.
So for, a lot of players that maybe didn't know that whole, it's kind of a company between two companies or whatever. Tell us a little bit more of that story, if you know, like kind of how that went about, how that was created, how the plastic, because I think they share or they use Latitude's plastic and design, but maybe you can explain it better how that works.
Oh man, I should probably know more if I'm going to talk about this. But I mean, all of the discs between, the Trilogy family, like anybody that is sponsored by one of those three companies, you can throw all of that plastic because it's all made in the same place at the Latitude 64 store. I think Dynamic's going to start maybe manufacturing some of their own discs. They just move into a much larger warehouse, but maybe more like base plastic stuff. But all of it, comes overseas, and it's, there's three distinct companies, right? But it's all from the same place. It's all made in the same factory, which is kind of interesting. I don't really know when Westside was acquired. So maybe this is something I should look up, send you guys an email. But
yeah, for sure.
Was it acquired or was it like something they created just kind of to like between each other?
I mean, I know that they both like own it, like co-own it now, but I think it was a separate entity. Like Dynamic Discs and Latitude 64 are completely separate from each other as a company, even though they share a lot of the same resources. So I think it was separate, and then it was bought out by the two companies.
Gotcha.
I could be totally wrong, and I should really get my facts straight, but that is what I think happened.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No,
I feel as though that almost puts Westside in a kind of a sticky situation because they can't. I almost want to say like their ceiling is capped because they've got the two other companies who, mainly control everything they do. So, I mean, sure, they can, grow a little bit and continue to, work on some things. But I don't know. I just feel like maybe the ceiling isn't as high as it potentially could be. But like you mentioned earlier, the signing of Nico Lacasher has been absolutely massive for Westside. And honestly, it's probably put Westside back on the map. If they could get a couple more folk over there, I really think you'd see a lot more people throwing Westside. Something that I was interested in here is, you being part of Trilogy, you can throw Westside, Latitude, Dynamic, it doesn't matter. But like, is there like maybe a certain like stipulation on, hey, yes, you're with Westside, so you have to throw 50% of your bag has to be Westside, or can you really just pick whatever
you can really just pick whatever you want? I mean, I could probably make an all Latitude bag, and that would be super weird, but I think I could. Maybe at some point they'd be like throw like a harp in there or something. But no, like you really can't. You can throw whatever in between the three companies. It's pretty cool.
It's definitely an advantage. You get more discs to choose from, but is it also a little bit more, I guess, confusing because you have so many options? Yeah, that's the right word.
Yeah. I mean, like I kind of started, I had I think when I started, I had like a trespass I threw a lot, and I had my harp. I'm trying to think of the other ones that I had before I was sponsored, because I had a few. It doesn't really matter, but kind of at first, like when I first got signed, it was like, I think I had already played the Memorial in 2018 or whatever, that's like when I got sponsored officially. And so like it was March when I got my first discs, like my first order, and I think I got almost all, it was probably like 75% Westside just to try everything they had, and then like 25% Dynamic because I was familiar with it. I didn't really throw a lot of Latitude, and I still don't, because I already have too many discs in my bag. Yeah. Like I already have so many molds that I'm trying to pare it down, but then you find a new cool disc and you want to add it, but your bag's full. So like, I mean, my knowledge is definitely primarily Westside and Dynamic discs, and like I'll occasionally like mess around with other discs, but when you don't throw them all the time, you don't really know them as well, and there's just so many to choose from.
Yeah. Was there a big learning curve kind of going from, I think you mentioned earlier you had maybe like 5 different companies or something like that in your bag before you got sponsored. Was there any kind of a big learning curve, or maybe a time period it took for you to really kind of learn the bag you have now?
I mean, definitely, and it's changed a fair amount. I mean, there are discs in there that I got in that first shipment that I still use. There's like a sword and a hatchet that I got that first day and still use them. And but like there were discs that definitely kind of seasoned differently than I expected. Like I threw a lot of primarily G-Star plastic drivers from Innifa, which I don't know, to me, I thought those kind of are what they are, and they didn't really change a lot, and they were like a little bit like a G-Star destroyer is way less stable than a champion or star counterpart. And so I wasn't really used to seasoning discs, so I grabbed like a sorcerer and a sword, and I was like, okay, a sword's going to be my overstable disc, and a sorcerer is going to be my straight disc. And then it was like, no. Several months later, a sword is going to be my straight to Hyzer, and my sorcerer is going to be more of like a, Hyzer flip and Hyzer disc that's going to finish to the right. So just kind of not having that same option of plastic, that was my preference, which now I use like a lot of hybrid plastic, which is relatively close, I think. The feel is definitely different, but in the way that the discs fly compared to the other plastic counterparts, I definitely prefer hybrid plastic, but that didn't exist when I first started. So there's a large learning curve.
That makes sense. And you've thrown a lot more of the 3 different companies that I have. I throw some dynamic. Dynamic. I have not thrown a lot of Latitude or West Side, but so all those discs are made in the same place, and you've thrown quite a bit of them. How many of those discs are very similar with different, are there any discs that are like the same disc with different names or companies on them?
I mean, I don't know that they're the same mold exactly, but there definitely is like the sword that I like so much is basically a Trespass, which is, Dynamics version. And I don't know Latitude 64 is quite well enough to compare that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is you could take any single company and probably find every disc that you want in that one brand. And then, you might branch out and find something like, oh, this one is just ever so slightly different, even if the flight numbers are all the same. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of overlap, but I don't think any are the same exact, mold, just like stamped with a different name. Yeah. A lot of overlap though.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's good that at least you've got options, and maybe if you're feeling burnt out on one disc, you can go to the next disc. So that's always good. I'm looking at your bag right now here online on westsidediscs.com and the team players we have here, and I noticed there's only one mid-range in there. Are you someone who doesn't really like to throw mid-range? Would you rather throw a putter than a mid-range?
I've upped that. No, I kind of just like throw a lot of like fairway drivers. Like if I step up to like a 200 to like 250 foot shot, even like 150 to 250, like I just like the way that a fairway driver flies. Like I had a hard time learning mids for some reason, and now I'm much more comfortable. So now I have a Tursus, a hybrid warship, a VIP gatekeeper, and a Lucid X suspect. So I've really upped my mid game. I should update my bag. But yeah, for some reason, I just like was never comfortable. Like it didn't fly how I wanted. It didn't go very far. It was kind of just felt demeaning. But over time, like I've changed my, form a lot, and even the way that I hold the disc, or like, I don't know, release the disc, or just the way of, like, I used to throw everything nose up a lot. And I think until I really fixed that, mids, like that was never going to happen for mids. Mm-hmm. Whereas like putters, though, also a fairly recent development in my game, throwing a putter, you do kind of throw it nose up and high, and then it'll just glide forever. So it just took a while. I didn't just spend enough time, I feel like, learning how to throw those discs. I'd just crank a driver.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that, especially learning. There's like an excitement that comes from throwing drivers. You get that extra distance. And then like if it turns out like you, where you turn it into a career, then you definitely have to go back and do the groundwork. But I think for a lot of casual players, you see most of them throw mainly drivers, I feel. Drivers and
but
putters.
You can develop a lot of touch with that too, like fairway drivers. I feel like I do have a really touchy fairway driver game, because I've just made that work for shots that maybe people would disc down. But like, I'm thinking about like, okay, I'm gonna flex it over here and then it's going to skip right here, like really thinking about every part of the shot just because I practice it so many times. So I think that's really helped me with that scramble game like we talked about earlier. Like I'm almost always going to pull out a fairway driver if I'm scrambling, unless I'm really, really close.
Yeah, for sure. Something that I gotta know, since maybe the bag needs a little bit more updated online, is, my favorite West Side disc is the Crown. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows how much I love the Crown. Are we using the Crown in any way, or are we putting with it? Is it a throwing putter for you? How is the Crown used for you, or am I just crazy for being a Crown kind of guy?
No, you're not crazy. I like the feel of it. I like mess with them when they came out, but it's another thing where I feel like I have the putters that I want and use, and it's like, can I really justify putting another disc in the bag? So I putt and have like 2 throwing maidens, and I have a shield and a harp, and that usually does it. Occasionally I'll put like a moonshine deputy in there.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know, maybe I actually think I have one in that little camper, so maybe I'll have to pull it out and mess with it some more since you like it so much.
Oh yeah, big fan of it. I remember when Horatio and I, we did a trilogy challenge last year.
Oh yeah.
And the Crown was the putter for it. And before that, I was just throwing like your basic little AVR that, you get when you get the starter set. And I literally trashed on the Crown the whole time we were there. I was like, bro, this disc sucks. It's super heavy. I can't make anything with this. This disc is worthless. Why did they even give this to us? And then I picked up an AVR again, and I said, I am a fool. Why did I like the AVR? And ever since then, I'm just collecting every single Crown I can.
Wow, you're just a man of extremes, huh?
Yeah, I guess. I probably went from absolutely hating it to I'm probably close to about 10 Crowns in the apartment right now.
Wow.
So your putting must be amazing, right?
What'd you say?
So your putting must be amazing.
It's still terrible. It's so bad, right? I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was feeling pretty good putting probably about 2 weeks ago. I felt like I could not miss, and then it rained for a week, and now I can't make anything to save my life.
It's funny because you gotta wonder like how much of that is physical and how much of that is mental. Because since I don't always play disc golf, like there will be times where I'll like not play for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something. It's usually not any more than that, but man, when I come back, I'm like the best in the world. I'm so good, like, because you just miss it and you're not overthinking and over analyzing, and you're just going out and you're happy to play. Whereas if I putt every single day, which I've gone through phases of doing that, I swear I get worse, because like you're just mad and critiquing yourself, but sometimes you get better, so it's like hard to figure out a balance of like your mental game versus like your physical, muscle memory repetitions.
What's happened to me lately, Horatio, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but like when we'll be having this bad weather and then can't play for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, the first time we go out, especially putting, I will not miss for like the first 6 holes, feeling super confident. And then the first time I miss, it's game over, and I feel like I can't putt anymore. Does that ever happen to you?
Oh, all the time. My putt can be really good and a strength, but like 20 footers, I swear, are the enemy, because it's like you get up there and you're like, I should make this. There's no reason I should be afraid of this, and then you miss, and then you might miss a couple of those. Whereas like if I'm at like 25 or 30, it's like just give it a good effort, like it's fine, like there's like a room of like, it's a tester, it's okay that I missed that one, and then outside the circle, give me that every time, because it's like bonus. But yeah, it can, you can definitely build your confidence and keep streaks like that, but yeah, sometimes if you miss it, it's really easy to let it get to you and not be able to recover. What's kind of funny, it's not quite the same thing, but it's close. I would say almost every tournament that I play, I bogey the first hole, even if it's easy, because you're just like nervous, even though you've done it dozens or hundreds or however many times. It just like gets to me, but then I'm not nervous anymore. So it's almost the opposite of like missing a short putt, because it's like, well, I did the thing I was dreading and I'm fine and I can move on. So I'm trying to, I'm getting better at doing that in the round and shaking off like a bad shot or a bad putt or whatever. But a bad drive or a bad approach for some reason doesn't really bother me as much as like missing a kind of a gimme putt or like you're good enough to make that putt 9 times out of 10, you know?
Yeah, because you kind of start to, like, it's more of not just your game. It's like you're being lazy or you're not focused or something like that. So then you're trying to figure out what's going on.
You're trying to figure it out. Like, what is it?
Yeah. Because it's so weird. That's like disc golf. Like people like that don't play that much or new players, like they think it's super easy and you take them out and they're trying it and they realize it's not that easy. And especially when you're trying to improve and you're focusing on one thing, you're like, okay, well today we're going to focus on this, and you start to see a difference. And then the next day you go out, you start, or next week you go out and you try to focus on something else, but then you forget about the other thing that you're focusing on like last week. So then it throws you off in a different way, and it's just a mess. When you can tie it all together, it's good.
But. So like I said, I had to go back and like relearn. I almost wish I had video of me from 10 years ago. I really don't. But from then to now, whoa. But it was really hard at first. Like, man, how do I throw a shot straight and not let it go to the left, like let alone go to the right? I could never make it just go to the right with a backhand, you know, I'm right-handed. And so to go back and to learn, like, where do you even start? And so I kind of had to start just one step at a time. And so I would say even now, I'm always working on like something, you know, and like right now I'm just trying to get my hips a little bit more involved. And because my hips open a little bit early, and so like I'm always kind of thinking about like, where's my right knee, and like it's kind of two things at once. I also reach back a little early, but they kind of go together. But basically, until I like nail that one thing and then I don't have to think about it anymore, I won't move on to another thing. So I'm not going to go out one week and be like, I'm going to think about my footwork, and then the next week I'm going to think about my reach back. Like, it's just that one thing. And then once you have it, you can move on. Because I mean, you're always going to find something. Everybody's always trying to get better. But it's hard too, because the thing is when you're practicing, it's good to think about those things and to analyze yourself. But then if you're playing a competitive round or even a round with your friends, if you're like on the tee pad, you're like, okay, make sure to reach back a second later than you want to. Like, you're not thinking about your shot. You're not thinking about where you're going to throw it and what you're trying to do. You're like thinking about your own body, and that's not going to help you at all. So you almost have to like forget what you've been working on and just trust yourself. And it's so difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So talking about working on some things, something that I think a lot of us here at the Clankers would like to learn is, how the heck do we throw a better Anhyzer? Erika, that is a question that I have for you. First off, what is an Anhyzer, and like how should someone like throw an Anhyzer?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this was hard for me to learn, so I feel you and everybody else who is struggling, because it's not natural. So if you're right-handed and you throw a backhand, right, you're throwing a shot that is always going to move like from the right and finish to the left, because it just has that like counterclockwise spin on it. So it's just like not a natural thing for it to go to the right. So basically, if you can spin the disc fast enough, it will kind of break its natural flight pattern, and instead of being a shot that starts either straight or to the right and finishes to the left, an Anhyzer is going to go straight and then break to the right. And depending on what you're trying to do with it, like just a straight up Anhyzer is going to go to the right and hold that line and keep going to the right and just finish on the right side of where you were throwing. But you have various versions. Like, disc choice is incredibly important for an Anhyzer. So you could take the most overstable disc in your bag, you know, like a Defender or your Destroyer or your, I don't know, Zeus or whatever's overstable in your bag, your driver, and you can throw it on a certain angle, right, where it's like kind of tilted towards you, like the face of the disc is tilted towards you, and you can throw it like that out of your hand and it will start to go right. But usually those discs are so stable that it's going to force over and finish left. So that's that forced flex shot. So if you ever have seen Nico Lacastro throw, he is a master of the force flex. So that's technically like has an Anhyzer component in it, but if you're just talking about an Anhyzer itself, the best thing to do is to throw an understable disc if you're having trouble with it. Like I said, I have a preference for fairway drivers, so I learned with an Underworld, which is incredibly understable. If you know flight numbers at all, the turn on a disc is basically how much is it going to go to the right, and then your fade is how much is it going to come back to the left. That's not a perfect description, but that's kind of how I like to think about it. So it's like a -3 turn. So it means it's not going to take very much spin to get that disc to break to the right if you're right-handed. Eventually, I got good enough at that shot that now I throw like a hatchet. And at first, I would have to throw, either straight or maybe even with like a little bit of an angle, again, kind of like lifting the face of the disc towards you to get it to hold. And now those discs, I can release them on a Hyzer angle, and they will flip up and then ride flat and then break to the right. So it really is just like how much spin can you get? And then also angling can be important. So like if you want to throw an Anhyzer like really hard, or just learn how to throw it, it's really good to start on the back right of the tee pad and move forward to the front left of the tee pad with your footwork. And you're up, like your body's up a little bit more. Like if you're trying to throw a Hyzer, you're doing the opposite thing. You're moving from the back left to the front right, and you're kind of like forward a little bit. Your body's like forward over the disc a little bit to throw a Hyzer. And I mean, it's subtle, like it's not super obvious, but like that is kind of how you might learn to throw those various shots. So an Anhyzer, you start on the back, your body's pretty upright, and then, I mean, you want to release like flat with the nose down, like you would in a shot, like as clean as you can, and the disc should do all of the work for you. I had a hard time learning because, again, I threw nose up for a long time. So like the bottom or like the front of the disc, the nose would lift up, and then a lot of wind would get underneath it, and it makes the disc stable out and go to the left. So I couldn't throw an Anhyzer until I could get my shot, like my disc, to release a lot flatter.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely a lot there taken for everyone listening.
It's hard. Yeah, I know. It sounds like technical. I wish I had like a
no, that's
video
good. Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah,
but
people can go back and listen. I know definitely for me, one thing that helped me a lot with angles in those shots, and I think it was Tristan Tanner when we had him on here, but he talked about just focusing on his release and with his arm. And so if I'm trying to throw a Anhyzer shot, I will really focus on following through lower, like below, towards the bottom of my body, as opposed to if I'm throwing a Hyzer, I'm going to follow through upwards. And I know that for me has helped me out a ton.
Well, the thing that's fun about talking about techniques is like no one does it quite the same. So you never know when you're going to hear just that perfect nugget of information, and then it clicks. You're like, oh my God, I can do this now. So it is interesting to get as many perspectives as you can, because sometimes you just hear something in the exact way that you need to hear it to be able to make it happen,
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that was some pretty good advice. I guess another question that I have on this topic is, could you maybe describe the difference between the old Hyzer flip and the Anhyzer? I feel as though maybe a lot of newer folk to the game might not exactly understand the difference between those. And I guess maybe a disc or two that you would use for either shot.
Right. Okay, so for me, let's see, I almost exclusively use like a Hyzer flip now when I want to throw an Anhyzer. So like I throw a hatchet. And so a Hyzer flip is when you're releasing on a Hyzer angle, but you can spin the disc so fast that, it's basically pointed diagonally where the left side of your disc is pointed towards the ground and the right side is up, right? So it's on a Hyzer, and then it'll flatten out and just be completely flat for a second, and then it'll start to break to the right where the right side of the disc is down. Whereas as an Anhyzer, you're either already starting it on an Anhyzer angle where the right side of the disc is down, or you're throwing a little bit flatter, maybe even totally flat, and then it breaks. So that would be the difference, is just the angle that you started on. And then, what it does in the air, obviously. The result can be identical. Just the shot shape while it's flying is going to be different. So like a Tersis is another really good understable disc. For me, actually, I throw that one pretty flat. Or even I can throw it on an Anhyzer and without turning it over too much, because the risk with an Anhyzer shot, right, is you throw it on that angle too much out of your hand, that Anhyzer angle, and then it basically just cut rolls straight into the ground. You throw it straight into the ground on the right, and then it just rolls away from you. So that's what you're trying to avoid. So a Tersis is a really good one where like I can throw that flat and it'll break to the right. If I throw it on a Hyzer, I can get it to ride straight, but not break all the way to the right. So I feel like I have a decent speed on the disc where like maybe that might be kind of stable if you're like newer or just like a really straight disc. But like as you get better, that is a really good Anhyzer disc for me. And then like a Warrant from Dynamic Disc would be another good one for a mid-range. And then, yeah, I don't know. I love those fairways. So if you want to try the Hyzer flip, I would say try it with an Underworld first. That's how I learned.
Cool. Awesome. I think we're good unless you have any more questions. So I think we can move on to the ace round.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are, man.
Yeah. All right. First question for you here. You're taking a buddy to go get their first set of discs. They're hooked on the sport and they want to get their own. What one? Putter, mid, fairway driver, or driver would you recommend to them?
Okay. So like 3 discs, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't know. To me, like I've switched putters so many times. Like a putter is a putter. So if we're in a disc shop and they get to feel it, I would just like literally hand them to them and be like, what feel of plastic do you like? Because I think that's really important. You don't want it to be like really slippery, or like what if it's really like crazy soft or something. So like I probably would hand them a maiden because I have a million and I could just give them one. But to me, the putter doesn't like matter that much. I would probably give them a maiden because it's really straight and they could see me throwing it and we could talk about it. For a mid-range, I would probably start them out with that Tersis because it's not going to be crazy stable and not always going to go to the left. Like even on if it's their first time going. Did you say it was their first time or just their first? Okay, so if it's early in their career of disc golf, I'd want something that they could throw pretty straight and be able to control without it just like diving to the left every single time. And then same thing with a driver. I don't even think I'd give them a full driver. I think I'd give them a fairway driver just to learn. And then I'd be tempted to do like a hatchet or a stag. So a hatchet is pretty understable. I want to say it's like a -2. So that one can get squirrely. Like if someone can throw really hard, they could lose control of it on that Anhyzer angle. So I'd be tempted to let them try a hatchet, but I think a stag is more versatile. Like you can make it hold any of the angles. It can go, Anhyzer to the right. It can hold straight. If depending your arm speed, it can definitely, stay on a Hyzer and finish to the left. So it's definitely really versatile, and like the rim is really comfortable. Like fairway drivers, any fairway driver, but I just like love how the stag feels. I think it's just a really comfortable learning disc.
Nice. Our second question we got for you is, what is the favorite course you have played and one course you would love to play?
Favorite course I have played. I mean, there's a few. I'd probably pick either of the courses at Milo, MacGyver, for BSF. It doesn't really matter which course. They're both amazing. And then I don't know, I really love Pier Park, which is also in Portland. Like there's no tournaments there, but just the feel of that course is amazing. There's like no underbrush, and there's these incredibly tall trees, and you can play there even in the rain and you won't feel the rain, and it's just like kind of ethereal. It's like a magical feeling place. Yeah, I got some love for Portland. And then the one I'm most excited to play is I've never played Maple Hill at the MVP. I was supposed to last year, but COVID and whatever, didn't get a chance. So I've been wanting to play that one for years. I watch a lot of disc golf coverage. I've always wanted to play that one.
Cool. Yeah, that one looks really definitely on the bucket list for me as well.
Yeah.
All right, question number 3 here. One tip you would give to yourself when you just started to play?
Learn technique, watch videos, listen to people. Don't just crank a max weight destroyer as hard as you can. Try to keep up with people you're playing with. Yeah, there's so much more content these days than there used to be. But man, I wish I watched anything. I literally didn't try to learn anything. I just went out there and did it. Yeah. Kind of wrong.
Nice. The 4th question we have for you is, what is your favorite memory playing disc golf?
That's like a hard one to pin down. You know, I pretty much anytime I'm playing disc golf, I'm pretty happy. I also have never aced, so I don't have like a cool go-to story. Sorry, I'm thrown for a loop. I've never thought about this.
No, you're all good.
I have one funny, memorable story that like I just had to laugh at myself.
Let's hear it.
Okay, I want to say it was like the 2018, maybe 2019 San Francisco Open. I like ran through the practice course. Like I only had one day to practice it, the entire course at Glen Eagles. And just like ran through past this huge group of like people being filmed, and was just like kind of stressed out, just trying to like get through the course before it got dark. And I came up to like hole 3, and there was a short basket, and I just, went to the short basket because that's what you do when there's different pins and different baskets. And it was like in a very different spot than the long pin. And then the tournament comes around, I'm like the first off the tee, I throw towards the short pin, freaking park it. And I think I'm like, great, like I'm like, oh man, I nailed that. And everyone was like, that should be fine. And I was like, what? And then they all like bail out early left because it's a par 4. It's like the only time I've ever seen the women's basket be a par 4 and the men's basket was a shorter par 3. And so like now they all bail out early left, and then they're all throwing like sidearms into this green that is like at 90 degrees, and there's like no way through. And I get to the men's basket, and like sure enough, there's not even a trace of a route. Like nothing, you can't even like be tricky. Like unless I go backwards towards the other ladies, like I'm not getting through. But I was kind of like, well, it's too late now. And I just chuck something, and then it bounces to the right. The pin's like straight ahead, and it bounces like, I don't know, 80 feet down a hill, and is in this huge tree. And it's like where they put all of the branches when they were cleaning up the course. And I'm just in like a pile of branches, and I'm like 80 feet away. Can't even see the pin. And I reach out and I throw a sidearm, just like chucking it up there, trying to take a salvage a par, and I threw it in for a birdie.
Oh, wow.
And then the next 2 days I played the course the right way, and I didn't birdie it. That was the only time I birdied it with like this crazy throw in.
You should have just done the same thing.
Oh my God. It was just like so stupid. And I just like was laughing at myself, for a long time.
That's pretty good. That's a good one. All right, so the final question we have for you here is, what is the biggest mistake you see new players make?
I bet new players are tired of hearing this, but like doing too much too fast, grabbing like your 12, 13, 14 speed discs like at max weight, and just trying to throw as hard as you can and focusing only on distance rather than technique. So like everybody says it, and it's true, like learn with putters, learn with mids, move your way up. Don't start with the hardest thing to control. And then, like me, it took me so long to learn how to throw mids and putters because I was just obsessed with distance, which I think is the classic mistake. Like who doesn't want to throw farther? Everybody wants to throw farther. You're not going to do that with a putter. It's like almost boring, Yeah,
for sure. Well, Erika, this was a fantastic interview. That was a really funny story that you had there at the end. We really appreciate you coming on, and I know I definitely had a blast. Again, one more time, where can the people follow you at on Instagram? And before we get out of here, do you have any sponsors you want to thank or any shout outs you got for us?
Yeah. Okay. So you can follow me at America with a K 71262 on Instagram. And what was the second part of what you just said? Oh my God. Oh, my sponsors, Westside Discs, obviously, and then Whale Sax. Check them out. Both great companies with great products.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking, time out of your day. It looks like you're having a horrible time there, just hanging out
Awful.
at the campground.
Campground, sunset on the little lake here is garbage.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it, just to wake up and play disc golf. Very lucky, for us that got to go to work tomorrow. We're thinking about you guys out there and wishing we were out there. So enjoy.
Well, fair enough. Well, thank you for having me. I hope that people out there who do maybe feel like they'd like to be living this lifestyle, but like are stuck with student debt and stuck in their career, like you can make it happen, and it's maybe harder than you want. But it's taken me 5 years to get here, but I'm here. So if that's what your dream, you can do it.
Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from so you never miss another episode.